Hello, I'd like you to take the risk tolerance quiz. It's available in paper form and some other places too, but just a few simple questions will help identify whether you are a stable investor who is very risk averse, whether you're an aggressive growth investor who is very risk tolerant, or somewhere in between. First of all, you ask yourself what age you are, and you'll notice that people that are younger are given more points than a person that's older. It's just there's not to say that there's a direct corollary there between age and risk tolerance, but certainly a person who's older has fewer years to before retirement to allow downturns in the economy and their portfolio to recover, whereas people that are younger should be more aggressive with their investments because of their distant time horizon. Circle the riskiest business or investment vehicle you're comfortable with. Bank accounts and CDs, if that's as far as you want to go, then give yourself 1 point. If you're comfortable with bond mutual funds, or stock mutual funds, owning individual stocks through a brokerage account, or engaging using your brokerage account to do stock options and short selling, then you would give yourself a point. Now, if you're not sure what something is, then don't circle it. Go stay with something that you do understand. Remember, you take this risk tolerance quiz every year, and to determine what kind of investor you are and what kind of arrangements or changes you might have. The reason for that is every year, of course, you're older, and it might make an effect to that first question, and also your experiences, your exposure, your education, and the fluctuations in the market and your own tolerance for risk at a particular time may change. So you want to keep abreast of it. Once a year, take the risk tolerance quiz. What would you be inclined to do if the stock market experienced a sharp sell off? Would you sell all your stock before it's too late? Would you wait for a rebound and then sell all of it? Would you move all your money into bonds? Would you just let it sit there and do nothing? Or would you buy more stock? And then, what is your time horizon? When are you going to use the money? How long are you going to be investing this money for? How distant is your financial need? So, let's say a person that is 30 years old and saving for retirement that they're planning on using when they're 60. Well, they've got more than 30 years, so they would give themselves 5 points. But let's say that you're 30 years old and you're saving some of your money for retirement and some of your money for a down payment for a house. Well, then the money that you're planning on, you're planning on buying the house in less than 5 years, so the money that you have invested for your house down payment, you would invest differently than the money that you're saving for retirement, which is 30 years away. So when you're asking yourself this question, there's a different way that you would invest for different kinds of things depending on when you are, how long you're going to be invested for. So once you add those points together, you're going to find that, let's say you're a moderate growth investor, and then let's say it added up to 13 points here. So if you add it up to 13 points, you're a moderate growth investor. And then as a moderate growth investor, there's three different stages here. This middle one we'll pick as a historical before tax growth of 9.4%. So if you're a moderate growth investor, you should anticipate investing your money, your investments should be 45% in medium-term bonds and AAA, long-term and medium-term AAA rated bonds. You should have 32% in large company stock, and you should have 18% in small company stock, as well as 5% in foreign stock. You could do that through mutual funds. You can do that through individual stocks. Or if that seems too complicated, then you could put your money into, say, a Vanguard 2060 fund or something like that. That's going to be about that same, it'll probably be about 50% bonds and 50% stock, a mix of stock and so forth. But if you were to invest in this way, then your risk level of this, the amount of standard deviation associated with this expected rate of return, is 9.8%. And so then your risk return ratio is 1.04. You'll notice that as we move from the stable portfolio that's mostly in cash and bonds down here to the aggressive growth portfolio, which is mostly stock and very little bonds and no cash, right? That the risk return ratio increases from a 0.74 up to a 1.37. That level of risk is another way of thinking about volatility. And a person who likes the look of these 10 or 11% returns on your investments should know that you're going to experience some years that are losing years, and you're going to have an overall expected long-term rate of growth that's in these double digits, but that it'll come with quite a lot of volatility that many people can't handle. That's why I ask you first, how much risk are you willing to, how much volatility, how much ups and downs, how much of a roller coaster ride are you willing to take? And you tell me how much of a roller coaster ride you're willing to take, and I, by using modern portfolio theory, give you a rundown of what you should be invested in as far as that goes. Let's see how it uses. So let's go back here to the moderate growth investor, 9.4% rate of return. How is that going to play out? So you use the Millionaire Machine to do that. Let's say you start saving when you're 25, and you invest in such a way that gives you a 9.4% rate of return. And let's say furthermore that you're saving, say, $50 a week. So that's going to work out to $2,600 annually. You started with nothing. So at the beginning of the year when you were 25, you had nothing. You contributed $50 a week, and what you have at the end of the year is the $2,600 you put in plus the $244 that you earned in interest and growth and dividends and so forth, all the different things that give you the rate of return of a 9.4. Now in this particular example we have steady growth, but you can see along the bottom here there's other scenarios that you might be interested in exploring. But this as a modeling tool gives you an idea about how the money compounds, and it's an illustration of compound interest, the Millionaire Machine. Since you ended the first year, or your 25th year, with $2,844, that means you begin your next year with $2,844. You put in another $50 a week. You earn interest not only on the money that you've put in this, but also you earn interest on the money that you started with. So you earn a total amount of growth, not 244 this year, but 511. And that means that after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, let's say at the end of 5 years, even though you've only put in $13,000, you have $17,000 in your account. That extra $4,000 was accumulated through interest and a return on investment. That's why you did it. Your money is earning money for you. If you take a look and continue along this road of when you start earning, start saving when you're 25 and investing at 9.4%, saving $50 a week, then after 14 years you'll have $76,000. After 21 years, you'll have $169,000. And after 28 years, you'll have $344. Now, 25 and plus 28 years later means you're 52 years old, and you have, at the end of your 52nd year, right, you have $344,000. So you're well on your way to, in that way that I was illustrating, right? 671 when you're age 59. And at age 64, you cross over the $1 million mark. So that's 40 years after you get started. So that would be $50 a week at 9.4% interest for 40 years will make you a millionaire. It works for everybody and it works every time, but but it requires you getting started and doing it for a long time. And there's going to be some fluctuation, and these are projections. You could have more or less than that, but you'll be in good shape. 35, 42 years later, somewhere in there. So you can imagine that if you're not comfortable with using these illustrations, and you want to mess around with them, you want to change the amount that you're saving or change the amount that your expected rate of return, then that will change your projections. But getting started is always the right thing to do. Now, before we leave this issue, I wanted to come on up here and show you some of the things that you could use the Millionaire Machine for. So, just to get an idea how to use it. So suppose someone invests $10 a week at 2% interest for 10 years. How would we figure that out? Well, we'd say, okay, let's say you get started on year 1 at, and if I, 2% interest, 10 years. So at the end of 10 years, they'll have 5,807. I guess you could round that to 5,808. How about $40 a week at 10% interest for 40 years? Come back here. We're going to put in $40. We're going to make this 10%. And then we're going to roll down here to 40 years. And you got $1,012,000. So let's remember that one again, because I often ask that one. $40 a week, 10% interest for 40 years makes you a millionaire. Going to round that off. Bob buys and smokes a pack of cigarettes every day for a year. What does he have to show for it 30 years later? I guess emphysema, cancer, right? Barbara, Bob's twin sister, saves and invests the same amount of money that Bob did. When Bob was spending money on cigarettes, Barbara was investing it. What does she have to show for it 30 years later? Let's see. All right, so we'll use the average cost of a pack as $8. And a $9 expected rate of return, and $8 a day, pack of cigarettes every day. So that's going to be $56 $8 a day times 7 days a week is $56 a week. So if we invest $56 a week instead for 30 years at 9% interest, we can see how much Barbara ends up with. So we're going to check it at the end of 30 years. This is going to be $56. This is going to be 9% interest. And we're going to see how much she has at the end of 30 years. It's $432,000. All right. I just thought that would be useful, because a lot of times people just say, well, $56 a week, and they forget about the compounding and what you might do with it. Now, one question, of course, is she would have actually had to invest it, and, hopefully, I don't wish anything bad on Bob, but what would you rather have 30 years from now? Would you like to have what Barbara has, or would you like to have what Bob has? Okay. You get to make your choice. See? So in all the things that we do, all these Millionaire Method examples, we have three issues. There's how much time you're going to be invested for, and how much you're investing, and what the interest rate is. And of those three things, right, which one do you think is the most important? Do you think it's the interest rate that you're earning? Do you think it's the amount of money that you're saving? Or do you think it's the amount of time that you're invested for? Many people get focused on this one or this one, but actually the main one is time. And I'll illustrate that by giving you two more examples. One of them is about these two fathers, and one of them begins saving, they're both saving $20 a week for their child. Father A begins when the child is 5 and invests for 24 years, and then gives the money to their child when the child is 29. Father B begins when the child is a baby and invests for 29 years. And the interesting thing about that is that the amount of money that Father B had to come up with for those 5 years is about $4,000, but the difference is about $48,000 extra. So the benefit to the child B is $40,000. The cost to the Father B was $4,000. So that's something to consider. Let's check out this one. Okay, so we've already shown that the Millionaire Method, right? Here we take a look at this part right here. There's which of the three variables. So we have the Millionaire Method is 10% rate of return, $40 every week, 40 years invested for, and that gives you over $1 million. But suppose you invested not for 40 years, but only for 20 years. If you invested 10% of your, you got 10%, just like in the Millionaire Method, and you did $40 a week, just like in the Millionaire Method, but you didn't do it for 40 years, you only did it for 20 years. How much money would you have then, is the question. And to that, we'll jump to the Millionaire Method. We'll see that these, we got a 10% rate of return. We're putting in $40 a week, and we can see that here at the end of 40 years you have 1,012,000, but at the end of 20 years we only had 131,000. So that's quite a difference, right? This is to show you that it's being in for the long run is the key. If a person starts saving when they're 20 years old or 25 years old, then 40 years later, when they've lived their good life for 40 years and now they're at a point where they'd like to retire and they have the $1 million. A person who waits until they're 40 to start saving, when they turn 60, they don't have anything close to $1 million yet. So people when they're 50 look back and say, I should have invested earlier. Why didn't I do it earlier? And that's one of the reasons that I'm sharing this with you, my students, so that your future self wanted me to tell you to start investing now. Suppose you did the 40 years and you did the $40 a week, but you only got 5% interest. How would that change things? So we come back to here and we say, well, suppose we didn't get a 10% return. Suppose we only get a 5% return, but we still do the $40 a week. How much would we have after 40 years? And that is 263, almost, let's call it 264,000. So about $250,000. And if you only invested half the money, you might be able to guess that this would be not a full million, but $500,000. Let's see how that works. 10%, $20 a week, not $40 a week, but only $20 a week for 40 years. So Obviously, like if you wanted to have $2 million in 40 years, then you would save $80 a week. And if you save $20 a week, then you'll only have $500,000. Let's illustrate. So here I'm doing $20 a week, but I'm earning 10% interest, and that means at the end of 40 years I have $506,000. So you can see how that lays out. All right, well, here we are. See that? Okay. So I thought you'd find that interesting. Good luck and good investing.